My phone buzzes while I'm pouring coffee. A notification from a professional forum. My name is trending with a highlighted quote attributed to me. I read it 3 times, waiting for the words to become familiar. The industry's diversity initiatives are performative theater designed to appease the guilt-ridden. Real merit doesn't require a handicap. The words are sharp, divisive, cruel. They read nothing like me. Nothing like how I speak. Nothing like any position I've ever articulated. But there's my name. And a byline referencing a closed-door session from 3 weeks ago. A session I wasn't in. I check my calendar. Pull up my email. I check my Access badge logs. I wasn't there. I know exactly where I was that day. People are already dissecting my position in the comments. Some praise the boldness. Others sound disappointed. One colleague says, "Didn't expect that from you." No one asks if it's true. I reread the sentence until it stops feeling surreal and starts feeling intentional. This is placement. Strategic, deliberate placement. Someone needed my credibility attached to words I would never say. And they needed me absent so I couldn't interrupt it. Cliffhanger. The session date doesn't match my clearance records. Messages flood my inbox. Not questions, commentary. Didn't expect that. Interesting shift. I respond to none. I download the transcript. The formatting is wrong. Font changes mid-paragraph. Citation numbers out of sequence. This wasn't clean submission. It was altered. Multiple times. I check my calendar. March 15th. The session date. I pull my Access badge records. On March 15th, my badge had been suspended for system updates. The suspension notification was March 14th at 4:47 p.m. I had no way to attend anything. No way to know someone was claiming I did. I open a new document. Title. Timeline. I write down times, not feelings. Dates, not emotions. The narrative is loud, but the process is sloppy. Whoever did this was fast, not careful. Confidence makes mistakes. The transcript metadata shows a revision made hours after final approval. I trace the edit trail through 7 revisions. One name appears repeatedly, not as author but as reviewer. Always present. Always invisible in credits. Always approving final versions. The name is Vivian Torres. I remember her. 6 weeks ago, she was in a meeting where I presented on industry standards. She'd been quiet, taking notes. But at the end, she spoke about alignment. How important it was that leadership voices stayed consistent on key issues. I dismissed it as corporate jargon. Now I don't. I check access permissions during my suspension window. Only 3 people could edit that document after it was marked final. 2 were out of state. 1 wasn't. Vivian was in the building. Her badge shows entry at 6:47 a.m. and exit at 7:23 p.m. I don't confront her. I don't alert anyone. I document everything. I add her name to my timeline with dates and access windows. I screenshot the revision history. The pattern is methodical. Calculated. The quote was inserted at a specific point where context would make it seem like a direct quote. I save everything to an encrypted folder. Her access window overlaps my lockout perfectly. The article gets picked up by other outlets. My quote spreads across platforms. The distortion is spreading. I attend a professional event on Thursday. The shift is immediate. Longer pauses in conversation. Careful smiles. Someone says, "You've been very clear lately." I nod. That night, I request archived email headers from the publication's administrative system. Standard procedure. The headers come back. One approval email, the critical one marking the piece ready for publication, was sent from my email account at 3:14 a.m. on publication day. I was asleep. One approval email was sent from my account while I was offline. I line everything up on my kitchen table. Suspension notice. Edit logs. Publication timestamps. Email metadata. Access records. They didn't invent a story. They waited for a specific gap, a planned gap, and filled it with confidence. My suspension wasn't an accident. It was the setup. Vivian sent an email to the editor on March 13th. Final approval tomorrow. Ready by end of day March 15th. She was confirming the timeline before anyone told her I'd be locked out. This was planned. On March 14th, Vivian sent another email with the transcript attachment. The one with the quote attributed to me. She was testing distribution. A second article is scheduled for release. Under my name. A second piece is scheduled for release, again under my name. The second article drops on a Wednesday morning. Same tone. Same divisive edge. Same voice that absolutely isn't mine. This time the quote is about compensation practices and gender equity. Equally sharp, equally cruel, equally damaging to my actual professional reputation and positions. My inbox floods again. Different names now. People I haven't heard from in years suddenly sending carefully worded messages. Some asking for clarification in ways that suggest they don't believe I'd say these things. Others offering support in ways that feel patronizing. Everyone accepts the premise. Everyone builds their response on top of that assumption. I still don't correct anything publicly. I don't post a statement. I don't email the publication. I don't send a message to Vivian. I stay silent. And something strange and powerful occurs. People begin defending me without realizing it. That doesn't sound like her. I've worked with her, and that's not her perspective. Something feels off about this. They're noticing the inconsistency without knowing why. They're sensing the mismatch between the voice in the article and the person they know. They're experiencing cognitive dissonance between the quote and the person. I note who says what. I screenshot the messages carefully. I add them to my timeline. These people, these witnesses who don't even know they're witnessing, they're documenting my actual voice without being asked to. They're creating independent verification that the quotes don't match me. Silence is starting to work differently now. It's not passivity. It's a tool. It's a strategic choice. I attend another event. Someone directly references the second article. They ask me what I meant by one of the statements. I answer as honestly and simply as possible. I didn't say that. I don't elaborate. I don't explain or defend. I just offer that single sentence. Their face changes. Confusion. Then doubt. Then they look back at the article like it might have transformed while they weren't looking. It hasn't. But now the doubt is planted in them. Now they're the ones holding two competing truths. The article says this, but the person in front of them is saying something different. And I'm not angry. I'm not emotional. I'm just stating facts. That calmness is more powerful than any argument could be. I'm listed as a speaker for an event I never agreed to attend. I find out about the speaking engagement through an email confirmation. The event organizer sends me a calendar invite with my name already confirmed as a panelist. No request. No, we'd love to have you speak. No invitation. Just assumption. Just placement. I pull the event registration record directly from the organizer's system using a guest login. My name was added by proxy. No digital signature. No consent trail. No email chain showing an invitation process. Someone, and I can guess exactly who, assumed I'd either stay quiet or attend and validate the false positions. I screenshot everything. Email confirmation. Registration record. Timestamps. Add it to the timeline document that's growing thicker every day. Then I do something calculated. I email the event organizer directly. Not accusatory. Just professional and clear. I received a calendar invite for speaking at your event on April 12th. I don't recall confirming this participation. Can you send me the original invitation and confirmation documentation? I want to make sure there's no mix-up with my schedule. It's a simple email. It's not aggressive, but it creates a paper trail. It forces someone to look back through their records. It makes the situation visible and documented. The organizer responds quickly. Too quickly. The tone is defensive. We had you confirmed by Vivian Torres on behalf of your organization. She said you were excited about the panel topic and had specifically requested to participate. There it is. Right there in writing. Vivian registered me as a speaker without my consent. She used her position, Her access to organizational lists, her credibility within the company, her organizational standing, to put my name on a public roster. She was building the narrative brick by brick, making sure I couldn't deny it without looking evasive or difficult. I add the organizer's email to the timeline. Date, time, the exact language. Confirmed by Vivian Torres. That's the confession right there, embedded in a casual response. The event organizer believes I personally confirmed. I decide to attend the event anyway. Not to speak. Not to correct anyone. Just to sit in the back and watch. To see what happens when I'm present but silent. I arrive early, take a seat in the last row and wait. The panel begins. 3 speakers. One of them references my position on the industry's future direction. He quotes the article directly. He delivers it with confidence, like it's established fact. Like everyone in the room knows who I am and what I believe. On stage, he glances toward the audience. His eyes scan. I think I know he's looking for me. He's looking for validation. He's looking for a nod or a gesture that confirms he's representing me correctly. I don't react. I don't nod. I don't acknowledge him. Just watch. My face is neutral. My posture is open but non-committal. The hesitation spreads across his face like a crack forming. He keeps talking but something in his delivery shifts. He's less certain now. He's second-guessing himself. The confidence that carried him through the opening minutes is starting to fracture visibly. After his statement, there's a moment of silence. The moderator asks a follow-up question. The panel member answers, but his answer is different now. And softer. It's hedged with language like some might argue, and one perspective could be. The certainty is gone. Someone else on stage cites a document I helped write 6 months ago. A framework document on industry standards and best practices. But they're referencing it incorrectly. They're pulling a quote that was altered in the final version. The original draft, my original draft, said something completely different. The published version that went out under my name says something else entirely. I know this because Vivian altered it. I have the version history documented meticulously. The citation is technically accurate to the altered version, but it misrepresents my original position. It's a perfect example of how the narrative has been twisted and manipulated. And I'm sitting in the back, watching someone repeat the lie without knowing it's a lie. Someone on stage cites a document I helped write, but altered. After the panel ends, conversations splinter into small groups. I move between them listening carefully. The accounts don't align. Someone mentions a quote from the article. Another person says they thought I'd said something different in a recent conversation. A third person pulls up the document on their phone and reads a passage aloud. It doesn't match. The document is different from what was cited on stage. Confusion spreads organically through the room. Details get repeated incorrectly. Someone says I was pretty clear about this in March. Someone else corrects them. No, that was in the second article. A third voice adds. But didn't she say something different at the networking event last month? The narrative is fraying. The structure is holding, but the details are coming loose. People are starting to notice the inconsistencies without me saying a word. The lie is becoming visible under its own weight. I answer only direct questions, and I answer with facts. Someone asks, what do you actually think about the compensation practices discussed in the second article? Pause. I look at them directly. Then I say simply, I didn't write that article. Not I didn't write that quote. Not, that was taken out of context. Not, that's a misrepresentation. Just the simple, clear fact. I didn't write that article. They're forced to sit with that. They have to reconcile the article existing, published under my name, circulated widely, cited by multiple people, with the fact that I'm saying I didn't write it. They have to hold both truths and figure out which one makes sense. A moderator finds me near the refreshment table. She looks troubled, uncomfortable, like she's been thinking about something and it won't let go. A moderator asks to clarify something privately. We move to a service hallway away from the crowd. The noise of conversation fades behind us. She keeps her voice low, professional, like she's handling something delicate. I wanted to ask about your evolution on this issue, she says carefully. Not if I've changed positions. When I evolved. The assumption is built right into the question. I let the silence stretch. Just long enough for it to feel intentional. Just long enough for her to feel the weight of the quiet. Then I ask her a simple question. What date do you believe that change happened? Her face goes still. She's running through her mental filing system, trying to locate the timestamp on my supposed evolution. She opens her mouth, closes it, searches again. She can't find it. I'm not sure, she finally says, and her voice has changed. It seems like recent. Can you point to a specific article or statement? I ask, still calm, still neutral. She references the first piece. The quote about diversity initiatives. This felt like a shift from what I'd heard before. What had you heard before? Yes. She pauses. Because now she's realizing something fundamental. There's no actual baseline. There's no documented position from me that contradicts the article. She's built her certainty on top of an assumption that I'd previously said something different. But I haven't. She just thinks I have because the article sounded different from how she expects me to sound. I watch the realization arrive slowly across her face. This certainty she's been operating on, that I've shifted positions, that I've evolved on the issue. It has no timestamp, no origin, no actual evidence, just repetition. Just the article being published under my name and everyone accepting it as a natural extension of who I am. I tell her I document every formal position I take. Always have. It's a habit from previous roles where documentation mattered critically. I tell her I can show her everything. Every article I've published, every statement I've made, every position I've articulated publicly. Her posture shifts. She's no longer asking casual questions. She's genuinely unsettled. Something is shifting in her understanding. Could you share that documentation? She asks. Just to clarify things. I nod. Neutral. Of course. I'll send it to you. I don't say this will change everything. I don't need to. She already knows. She asks who else has seen my records. I spend that evening and the next morning organizing everything into a single comprehensive file. Not an argument. Not a narrative. Not an emotional plea. Just pure, unemotional documentation. Access logs. Submission windows. Verification notices from independent systems. The suspension notification with its precise timestamp. The edit trail with Vivian's name appearing at each critical moment. The email sent from my account at 3:14 a.m. The event registration with confirmed by Vivian Torres. It's all there. Clean. Unemotional. Impossible to misread. No adjectives. No emotional language. Just sequence. Just cause and effect. I send it to the moderator with a single line. For your reference. Hours pass. Then I see it happen. The forwarding chain lights up on my email notifications. Internal recipients I wasn't copied on before. People higher than the moderator. People who care about exposure, not ego. I imagine them scrolling through the timeline, trying to locate an argument. There isn't one. There's only sequence. Only evidence. Only the undeniable progression of events. Someone from the publication forwards it to their legal team. I can tell because the forwarding chain changes tone completely. The language becomes careful. Procedural. Lawyers are now reading the same timeline I assembled. I don't follow up. I don't check in. I don't send a message asking if they've reviewed it or what they think. I let the file speak in rooms I'm not invited into. That's the entire point. The evidence doesn't need me to defend it. Speaks for itself. The file is marked reviewed by compliance. And then I can see from the metadata, it gets forwarded to someone in the publication's management structure. Higher than editors. Higher than legal. Someone whose job depends on avoiding exactly this kind of situation. Someone who understands liability and exposure intimately. The machinery is moving. I can feel it shifting in the background. The file is marked reviewed by compliance. Vivian messages me directly on a Thursday afternoon. The tone is friendly, casual, designed to sound like she's reaching out with good intentions, like she's trying to help. Hey, I think there's been a misunderstanding about how things went down. I'd love to walk you through what actually happened so we can clear this up. Coffee sometime. She assumes confusion. She assumes I'm upset because I don't understand how the process works. She's offering to explain it to me like I'm the one who's been missing context. Like I'm the one who needs help understanding what happened. I read it twice, then once more, paying attention to what it reveals instead of what it says. She references an edit made during a window I never disclosed to anyone. A specific revision that only someone directly involved would know about. She's trying to show me that she has detailed knowledge of the process, that she was there, that she knows what happened, that she can explain it all. It's a mistake. It's arrogance. It's her revealing that she knows details she shouldn't know without admitting why she knows them. I respond carefully. I thank her for reaching out. I tell her I appreciate her willingness to clarify. And then I ask one neutral question. What source did you use for that particular revision you mentioned? I want to make sure I'm looking at the same documentation you are. She replies too fast. Within minutes. And she names the wrong document. She references a revision that doesn't exist in the version I sent to the moderator. She's pulling from an earlier version. She's pulling from something she saw while editing. But I never shared that version with her. Her explanation contradicts the system logs. I don't correct her. I don't point out the error. I don't ask how she has access to documents she shouldn't see. I just save the message exactly as it is. Time-stamped. Unedited. Screenshot and archived in multiple places. She sends a follow-up message trying to soften the narrative. She suggests maybe there was miscommunication about what final approval meant. Maybe there was confusion about the revision process. Maybe she was following standard procedure without realizing the implications. But the damage is already done. The first explanation exists now. Confident. Specific. Well, it's documented. It's preserved. And it contradicts the system logs directly. I forward nothing yet. I simply add her messages to the growing record. There's a difference between proving intent and letting someone demonstrate it themselves. She thinks this is still a conversation. An exchange where we're working toward mutual understanding. It isn't. It's documentation in progress. And with every message she sends, trying to soften the narrative, trying to reframe what happened, she's adding to the evidence against herself. Independently, someone else asks me about that same edit. A colleague from another department. They're confused because they've been reading through the timeline I assembled, and they don't understand how a particular change got approved. They ask me directly. I answer honestly and briefly. I don't elaborate. I just provide the facts. Someone else independently asks me about that same edit. The questions start coming from unexpected places. Quiet messages. Careful phrasing. People asking what I remember about approvals they now realize were rushed. People asking if I'd noticed timeline inconsistencies. People asking if I'd seemed upset about the articles when they'd last spoken to me. I don't recruit them. I don't guide them. I don't say, you should be concerned about this. I answer honestly and briefly. When someone says, I'm confused about how this was approved, I just show them dates. When someone asks, did you know this was being published? I say no and I show them the timeline. Their own memories begin filling in gaps. One admits they were told I'd already signed off. They'd been briefed that way. Another says they assumed my silence meant consent, that if I'd been aware and objected, they would have heard about it. I don't correct the assumption. I don't say, no, silence isn't consent. Just show dates, documentation. Let them compare. Let them feel the inconsistency themselves. Let them come to their own conclusions. A third party from the publication's administrative team contacts me because she's been asked to verify the timeline. She has her own records. She's comparing them to mine. And they match. Your suspension was definitely active during that period, she confirms. It's not something you could have accessed around. I thank her for verifying. I don't ask her to take any action. I don't ask her to report it to anyone. I just acknowledge that she's been helpful in confirming the facts. The machinery of truth is grinding forward, person by person. A third party confirms my access was suspended during edits. The publication reaches out formally. Tone is cautious, legal adjacent. They say clarification instead of error. They propose a minor adjustment to wording. Maybe adding a clarifying phrase. Maybe modifying the attribution slightly. I recognize it for what it is. Containment strategy. Fix the surface. Leave the structure intact. Admit enough to be technically accurate while protecting the deeper liability. They're offering me a band-aid for a structural problem. I decline politely. And I ask a single question. Can you walk me through your process compliance for article approval? I'd like to understand how the current version made it through your verification. The response time slows dramatically. I can feel them conferencing internally. They're realizing this isn't going to be resolved with a quick edit and a quiet correction. My file is now being read by people trained to look for exposure. People whose job depends on understanding liability and risk. People who know what happens when organizations ignore evidence. They respond carefully, explaining their standard approval process. Editor review. Fact-checking. Legal review. Final approval from the managing editor. Who approved the final version? Yes. There's a long pause. Then they tell me. And then they realize I've just put them in a position where they have to defend that person's approval of a document containing factually inaccurate information under my name. They add the reviewer to the email thread. A revised draft is sent. My name is still there, but the quote is softened. The edge is rounded off. Still doesn't sound like me. It's still not a position I ever articulated. But it's less obviously false. They want resolution without responsibility. I read it carefully. Then I explain why it doesn't address the issue. I don't mention intent. I don't say, you fabricated this. I reference policy, approval chains, access standards. I speak their language. The language of procedures and compliance and institutional risk. The issue isn't the wording of the quote. The issue is that the quote doesn't represent a position I ever articulated, and the approval process for the article appears to have violated standard procedures. Rewording the quote doesn't address either of those problems. They stop suggesting language and start asking questions. Different posture now. Less confidence. More caution. They're beginning to understand that this isn't about managing optics. Someone asks who authorized the original edits. I respond with attachments, screenshots, logs, independent verification, access records that can be cross-checked against building security. All of it. Everything. No adjectives. No emotional framing. Just evidence. The conversation changes tone completely. The publication isn't looking for a way to soften the narrative anymore. They're looking for a way to minimize exposure. Vivian goes completely silent. She doesn't send messages. She doesn't attempt to clarify. She disappears. Others fill the space. New people. Different people. They ask about safeguards. How did this slip through? What prevents this from happening again? I answer what I know and nothing more. I describe the inconsistencies. I explain what the documentation shows. I don't offer solutions. That's not my job. Legal is officially added to the correspondence. Legal is officially added. My document spreads internally. I can tell by the questions that start coming in. Precise, careful, procedural. Questions about specific dates. Who had access when? Why certain approvals happened. Someone asks me to resend the file. Then asks again. They want consistency. They want defensibility. They want multiple copies of the exact same documentation so there's no claim of alteration. I send it again. Unchanged. Word for word. Behind the scenes activity spikes. Requests for archived emails. Verifications with building security about access dates. Cross-checks against employee schedules. The infrastructure of truth is being constructed. Someone removes their name from another draft. And another. Vivian hasn't spoken in days. Her silence reads differently now. It's the silence of someone watching everything collapse. I'm told edits will no longer be allowed in the upcoming formal meeting. Edits will no longer be allowed in the meeting. I walk into the meeting room with printed pages. Hard copies. No slides. No presentation. No speech. I place the timeline on the table and wait. They read. Slowly. Carefully. No one interrupts. Someone starts to speak, then stops. The sequence is undeniable. Every claim is documented. There's nowhere to hide. Vivian sits across the table. She doesn't look at me. She doesn't look at the documents. All eyes turn to her. All eyes turn to the reviewer. I explain nothing. I answer questions when asked. Each answer ties back to a timestamp. Record. Rule. Arguments dissolve when they can't anchor to time. Someone tries to suggest misunderstanding. I respond with the March 13th email confirming the deadline. Someone else suggests revision history was misleading. I show independent verification. No one argues with time. Vivian sits silently. She doesn't try to explain. The chair calls for a vote on a formal retraction. The chair calls for a correction vote. The vote passes unanimously. Every hand goes up. No one asks Vivian to explain. No one gives her opportunity to defend. No defense is offered. Vivian doesn't look at me. She doesn't apologize. She just nods slightly. The room avoids spectacle. This isn't punishment theater. It's acknowledgement. A formal retraction is drafted. The correction is published quietly. 2 weeks after the vote. We regret to inform readers that an article published on March 15th containing quotes attributed to my name was published without her consent and does not reflect her actual positions. The quotes were included in error. We have removed the article from our archives and are conducting a full review of our approval procedures. My record is restored. The quote is removed. I receive a private request for a statement. I decline politely. The retraction is sufficient. I'm offered a position. Roles shift in the weeks that follow. Vivian is moved to a different department. Access is restricted. She's essentially sidelined. I'm asked to participate in a standards review. A committee ensuring this doesn't happen again. Except, 3 months later I'm asked to chair it. Say yes. They ask me to chair it. I never tell my side publicly. I don't write an article. I don't give interviews. I don't post explaining how my name was stolen. The timeline did exactly what it was supposed to do. It spoke in rooms I wasn't invited into. Changed minds by refusing to argue. It won by simply being true. Vivian's name disappears from credits. Her role diminishes. She becomes institutional knowledge. My reputation recovers not because I defended it loudly, but because evidence cleared it quietly. I chair the Standards Committee. We implement new procedures, new oversight, new safeguards. Arrogance crumbles under evidence. The truth doesn't need a voice, just needs a timeline. I learned that silence is placement. Strategic, patient, methodical placement. You let the narrative grow. You let people invest in the lie. You let arrogance build. Then you place truth in front of them, undeniable and complete. They can't argue with it. They can't reframe it. They can't make it disappear. All they can do is face it. And that's victory.